It's Nerdorama Retro Nostalgia time. What we're going to do today is see if I can rescue my poor old Sega Game Gear. Now, I did have one of these back in the early 90s. This is one that I purchased in the very early 2000s to go on a trip with. It has seen better days. It's currently not working. It does need capacitors replacing, so this is why I have learnt to solder. So I think after my first soldering experience, we're going to be ready to give this a go. I have purchased this wonderful kit. It comes with very clear instructions, which capacitors go where they need to be removed. Here they all are. So we've got capacitors on the power board, capacitors on the audio board, capacitors on the main board versus the single ASIC or the twin ASIC. Either way we're fine, so when we open it up we're going to find out. Let's get everything crossed, get this opened up. Let's see what we can do. I ended up shooting over 5 hours of footage for this video, plus there was quite a bit of work done off camera as well. So a lot of things I'm just going to show you in fast forward and just stop and give you the highlights as things happen. So unscrewing the screws, there were still a few challenges here that I had to solve. Obviously you need to make sure you use a screwdriver that has the correct size on it or you're not going to have any luck, but there were some tight screws. Oh man. Okay, I'm going to have to hold it against my body, hold that in. This is a tough screw. I think we might have just loosened it. So the screws in the bottom of the case and in the battery compartment, they were the toughest ones that really needed the pliers to get them going. But after a little bit of creaking, they did loosen up and they came out quite nicely. So what I might do is pause here, do a quick look online on my Sega model and see what I do there, because the last thing I want to do is break anything. Like I could try some little needle nose pliers, but I don't want to damage the plastic. So I'm going to pause here. I'll be back in a second. Jumping ahead 2 days, this is a security screw and I have ordered a screwdriver set from Amazon. 2 screwdrivers, they're slightly different size screws, but of course I've been sent 2 of the same size screwdriver and I needed the bigger size, so the screwdrivers that I have do not fit the security screw. So I will be back in 2 more days. And we're back 2 days later. Amazon has smiled on us, amazon.com.au. I'm going to do a live opening of the packet and see if I have been sent the correct screwdrivers this time. All right. I'm thinking it's looking a lot better. This is the one that I got last time. The smaller one has this ridge in. The larger one does not. Here they are. I think we're in luck. Oh, it fits right. Oh, and it turns. Ha ha! Woohoo! Right. Security screw. Be gone. Oh, it's lifting off straight away. Oh, we're looking on the inside. Now I'm going to be careful because we have some connectors here that I definitely do not want to damage. So we have one here, which I believe is for the audio. This one is also going to the audio board. This one here is for the power. All right, audio cable came out nice and easily. And it will only go back in one way, so that's good. Definitely good for me. Yep, beautiful. And on this side. Cool. All right, we have separated the top from the bottom. I'm going to work on the audio side and the power side first because there's less complexities in these ones than there is on the main board. So we're just going to get out this little shield. The removal of the shield and the audio board and the power board were pretty straightforward. Yes, we do need to peel this off. So I'm going to do my best to peel it off without breaking it. It's going to be quite sticky. Good, good, good. Come on. Aha. Right. Getting closer. There's also a nice curly hair in there. Definitely not one of mine, so that's probably been in there for a good 30 plus years. Will we lift out nice and easily now? Come on. So close. Yep. Okay, so we've got to lift the battery part as well. Lift it. There we are. And we're out. Okay. Let's bring it back in. Let's put the switch back on. Here is our power board with the little Sega. My lovely instructions have all of the capacitors grouped for me. So these are the audio board ones, this is the power board, and these are the ones that are going on the main board. And they've got very nice pictures that I will be following. So these are a great set. Leave me a note in the comments if you're in Australia and if you'd like to know where I got them. Wonderful eBay seller on ebay.com.au. So the three capacitors here, bit more straightforward to replace. They stand up. I've actually practiced removing some of these capacitors before, so hence, let's just start with this. So my finger underneath is going to be pulling the capacitor this direction while I go for the outside pin here. I've got a bit of extra solder on the tip. There we go, popped out nicely. And then on the other side, we're going to do the same. Add a bit more solder. Here we go. Yep, very nice. Come on. Haha. While we're here, we're going to have a go at clearing out the holes. I did struggle with clearing out the holes, but the solder sucker did a good job at getting a lot of the surface level off as well. Also adding some flux and using the solder braid, that definitely got a lot off, and you'll see me struggling later and the method that I came up with to get the holes back into the board. To get the holes back into the PCB, after struggling with using the solder sucker and the solder braid, I ended up using a safety pin. So adding some more solder, pushing the safety pin through, and then when the safety pin was through the hole, then using some flux and some solder braid and the solder sucker to try and get rid of some of the excess solder around the safety pin, and then heat it up again and quickly pull out the safety pin to hopefully reveal a hole. Okay, we have our two holes, plus on this side, minus on this side. Plus or positive is the long leg. Long leg. Short leg. Oh, we have slid in. First capacitor. Now, I don't want to jinx myself, but I feel like the soldering part, I am going to be better at. The desoldering. Very challenging. Going to hold it up nice and flush here. Just add a bit of tin on this one to get it held in place for me. That's held in place. Do the same for the other side, just get it in place. Going to get a bit more solder on. Oh, don't get solder on things that don't need them. Cool. Cool. Right. All of that for one capacitor. I find soldering the capacitors in quite straightforward. The biggest struggle I had was making the holes nicely in the PCB. Here you can see I've accidentally bridged two very small capacitors while trying to add some extra solder around the pin where I was trying to make the hole. Eventually I did manage to clear it, only just. It actually did take me quite a long time to clear out the other holes, but we got there. So now what I'm doing is just giving everything a nice spray with some isopropyl alcohol, just to make sure that I wipe up any excess flux that's been left over after me attempting to clear out those holes and doing the soldering. And here is our finished product with the 3 capacitors finally replaced. Moving on to the audio board now, and we deal with the surface mount capacitors that just have a little tab of solder on each side. Originally I was going to do this board first, but I was scared of the surface mounts. They're not too bad actually. Just pop a bit of solder on the tip and then heat up the solder, gently pry it off, and they all came off quite easily actually. The biggest challenge for me was basically not burning myself with the soldering iron and my fingers so close together. Perhaps I could have used pliers, but all in all, everything went pretty well with removing these, but some of them didn't have quite as nice solder pads left over as this one did. This little capacitor down here has definitely leaked and is showing some signs of corrosion, so just a quick spray of isopropyl alcohol and my cleaning toothbrush. It just helps clean up the pads a little bit so that when I pop the solder on there, it's got a much better chance of hitting the pad so I can remove the capacitor. So you can see there it's much tidier and it's much cleaner. I've seen quite a few repair videos and they have often spoken about a fishy smell from a leaked capacitor. This is definitely one of those, so it was the first time that I experienced that really strong fishy smell from the chemicals that have come from inside the capacitor. So really important to make sure that you wash your hands after you've been dealing with anything like this. So again, another spray with some isopropyl alcohol just to try and tidy up the pads. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of fresh solder as well. So when it comes time to add on the capacitor again, it's got a much better chance of heating up and sticking. The rest of the capacitors actually came off really quite easily. Given everything a really nice spray with isopropyl alcohol, added a bit of solder to the pads that needed it, and we're ready now to start having a look at adding capacitors back to the board. Here's the wonderful instructions. They're very clear, and these are the 5 little capacitors that we'll be mounting back onto the board. This is 7 minutes of me struggling to put the first capacitor on. I should have taken more care getting the pad ready, but look at what's about to happen. I've put it in slow motion so we can all appreciate it. Here I am, adding the solder, getting a lot ready, and bang! Yep, causing another bridge. When will I ever learn? I was able to fix it using a combination of the solder braid and the solder sucker. Getting the solder nice and hot, I was eventually able to remove it. I made all of the mistakes with this first capacitor. You can see that I've got the legs splayed out, and I actually cut the legs really short before soldering it for some silly reason, so that did not work. I'm going to demonstrate now what was a much better method. Bending the legs under the capacitor made it so much easier to work with, and this is also necessary because the original ones were surface mounts, so I couldn't mount them all standing up because they would have been too tall and hit the case. And there is the audio board, finally finished. Over to the main board now. The capacitors had all been folded over and they were in little plastic cases, so it was just a matter of using the pliers just to break the little bit of plastic as it was glued to the main board, and then move my way around to get them all loose so that they could then be folded up and ready for removal. Just like all the others, starting with a bit of solder on the tip, push the capacitor in the opposite direction. Because they're so small, I did end up using pliers this time because I was convinced I was going to burn myself. Plus it made it so much easier just to lift the capacitor off. I did get into the groove, and the rest of these, they came off very nicely. I got my technique down pat. Nice and easy removal. Get some fresh solder onto the pads, and I did go around with a cotton bud and some isopropyl alcohol at the end just to make sure there was no flux residue left on the board. I'm not going to give you motion sickness by showing you another sped up version of me doing all the soldering, but here's an example of just one that I did. The challenge with these was just to make sure that they didn't overlap any other components because they weren't quite as small as the original capacitors. And the other thing that you need to be really careful of is to make sure that none of the golden disc parts have anything touching them, because that's where things like the buttons and the controller pad need to be touching to make contact. Here we are with all of the capacitors finally replaced. After all of that, the main board is back in. So we had the two capacitors on this side, and I've steered clear of this because it's very important that all of these are clear because these are the contacts for the controls. And we have our capacitors over here. Touch wood, they weren't too bad. I was expecting this to be the worst part, but I think actually the smaller boards, the audio and the power, presented different challenges. So let's put it all back together and go for a live testing. So I've already put the audio board back in and the power board back in. The challenge with this one was there's a capacitor under here, so you have to make sure that when you mount these that they don't stand up because this needs to sit down flush. So those capacitors went on okay. This clip. Should only go in one way. Audio clip. This one controls the speaker and it's in. Okay, that's in, that's in. We'll pop this plastic covery thing back on. I think it just makes sure that nothing else touches the power contacts on the inside. Now, are we lying down flat or is there a capacitor that's too tall? Okay, we're going to try and screw it together now. Why do I have so many screws? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, all batteries, 5, 6. Okay. Start with the batteries. Let's get some batteries in. And the covers. Here we go. Okay. Oh. It's in very nice condition. I brought this many years ago, early 2000s, I believe. Okay. This is the moment of truth. There were a lot of ups and downs. I'm really... Oh, there I am. Hello. I'm going to be surprised if we get anything. Okay, here we go. All right, where's the brightness? Well, we have power. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have to do some further diagnosis. I do have another cartridge. Oh! At least said Sega. Oh. Where's volume? Okay, we still don't have volume, but can you believe? Here, let me get the lights off. That's a bit more representative of how it looks in real life. It doesn't look too bad. Oh, I loved columns. Wow, my controllers appear to be working. That's working, yep. That's working, yep. Okay. So potentially the slot that's been open to the elements for the years, it may need a bit of a clean in there. Let's try Sonic again. One. Pop it in and out a few times. See if that dislodges anything. I'm going to go back and I'm curious to see if my headphone jack works, if I've got any sound output at all, because potentially it could just be the speaker that's a bit stuffed. Oh, interesting. Now this game's back in and this game's not working. Is it a contacts issue? Okay. There we go. The colour's not bad. That's a fairly decent representation of what I can see when you get on the right angle. I'm going old school. Oh! Oh yeah! So my sound is actually working. I might just have a problem with the speaker or the speaker connection. That's exciting. Why didn't that make a... Oh, you got to make 4. Thought you only had to make 3. Well, here it is. It's actually working. I just need to investigate the speaker, but I'm still very happy with how this has gone. I have replaced all of the capacitors myself. Many errors, many disasters along the way. I can't believe it's even still powered on. So this has been my very, very first console repair, my very first time working inside a console. So hopefully things only can get better from here. Thanks for coming along for this journey. Please give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me a subscribe, leave a comment, and thank you so much for joining me at Nerdorama Retro Nostalgia. Bye!